So can a short sentence, I mean, literally just a handful of words, change the entire history of the world?
That is a massive question.
Right. And more importantly for you listening today, can those exact same words change your fate, your destiny, your actual future?
I mean, it sounds like hyperbole, but when you really look at the data, it's not.
It's totally not. And that's exactly what we're getting into today. We're taking a deep dive into the foreword and introduction of Evaldo Albuquerque's book, The 16-Word Sales Letter.
Which is just a fascinating piece of work.
It really is. Because we're going to look at the foundational architecture of persuasion. How a tiny distilled message actually put a man on the moon.
Yeah.
And then how a guy who wasn't even a native English speaker took that same kind of repeatable structural formula and he completely obliterated the competition. He outsold the greatest American copywriters by like 600%.
Which is just an insane metric. What's fascinating here is that we are essentially stripping away the so-called art of writing.
Right, taking the romance out of it.
Exactly. And we're looking at the absolute pure science of human behavior and response. Because we tend to think of persuasion as this mystical gift, like you either have it or you don't.
Oh, totally. Like you picture someone just naturally gifted, standing at a podium, or a writer sitting in a coffee shop waiting for inspiration to strike.
Right. The whole tortured genius trope. But for anyone interested in business or entrepreneurship, this deep dive matters because it proves that world-class persuasion isn't about having the biggest vocabulary. It's about having the right formula.
Which is such a relief, honestly. But to really unpack this, we need to start off by looking at a specific historical moment.
The JFK example.
Yes, exactly. So let's set the scene based on what's described in the foreword. It is September 12th, 1962.
A very specific day.
Yeah, and it's a steamy 81 degrees in Houston, Texas.
Mm.
John F. Kennedy is standing in front of like 40,000 packed fans at Rice Stadium.
And you have to remember the context of that exact moment in time. The stakes are impossibly high.
Right, because America is losing the space race to the Soviets, and they're losing it badly.
The national anxiety was palpable.
Absolutely. So Kennedy is up there, and he basically just mutters 10 short words. He says, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade."
Just 10 words.
10 words. And the author brings in this brilliant analysis by John Jordan to kind of deconstruct this. Because, I mean, why did that work so well?
Well, it wasn't an accident. When you break down the rhetoric, Kennedy actually deployed 3 very specific calibrated techniques right there.
Okay, lay them out for us.
So first, he characterizes space as a beckoning frontier.
A beckoning frontier, okay.
Right. And second, he articulates a very specific timeline, which creates this historical moment of urgency.
So that's the in this decade part.
Exactly. If he had just said, we're going to the moon eventually, nobody cares.
Yeah, they'd just be like, cool, let me know when.
Right. And then the third technique is that he invites the audience to live up to their pioneering heritage.
Wow, okay. So it's frontier, urgency, and heritage. But I want to pause on the tangible effects of this. Because the text talks about the long-term ripple effects, and it's kind of wild.
It is. 7 years later, Apollo 11 lands.
Right, but it goes way beyond that. The book connects those 10 words to, like, the GPS in your car today, or getting Google Earth imagery of your house, or even Sirius satellite radio.
Yeah, the argument is that none of that happens without the alignment created by those 10 words.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I really have to push back a little here.
I figured you might.
I mean, how does a 10-word sentence literally result in the GPS on my phone? Isn't that just a massive kind of romantic leap?
It sounds like it, yeah.
Like, is a corporate vision statement or a presidential decree really the same thing as inventing microchips? JFK wasn't in a lab building satellites.
No, of course he wasn't. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, those words didn't invent the GPS technology itself. What they did was organize the emotional will of an entire nation.
The emotional will.
Yeah, and the financial resources, too. To build something that complex, you need millions of people aligned. You need the taxpayers to fund it, the engineers to design it, the politicians to approve it.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Right, if Kennedy had given a 500-page technical manual on orbital mechanics, it wouldn't have rallied anyone. The brevity is actually what made it memorable.
So it's like a container. The 10 words just held the entire mission together.
Exactly. The structure of that brief message is what made it actionable. It bypassed the analytical part of the brain that would have said, this is too expensive, and went straight to the tribal identity and urgency.
That makes a lot of sense. So for you listening, the practical takeaway here is huge. If you're pitching a business or a new product, your mission shouldn't be, a 50-page manifesto.
Nobody's going to read that.
No. It needs to be a core 10-word style mission statement. You have to align your audience's deepest heritage or desires with a really urgent timeline.
It has to force an immediate response.
Right. But, okay, there's a caveat here. JFK was the president of the United States. He had an army of elite speechwriters.
The best in the world. Masters of rhetoric.
Exactly. So what happens when you try to apply this exact same power of brevity to something like direct sales?
Oh, this is the best part.
And especially, what if you barely even speak the language you're trying to sell in?
It completely flips the script on what we think makes someone a good communicator.
It really does. So we shift from Houston in the 60s to the freezing cold offices of Agora Financial in Baltimore, Maryland.
Quite the change of scenery.
Yeah, totally. And it's February 1st, 2019. The publisher there, a guy named Joe Schriefer, is sitting with Evaldo Albuquerque.
And Schriefer's basically just demanding to know, how do you do it?
Right, because Evaldo is Brazilian.
Mhm.
And the text points out that just a decade prior to this meeting, his English was basically limited to words like book, cat, and table.
Just absolute beginner level.
Yeah. But in 2018 alone, this guy brought in 100,000 front-end customers.
Which is staggering. Getting 100,000 people to pull out their credit cards for the first time is one of the hardest things to do in business.
And it doesn't stop there. He also wrote over $80 million worth of back-end sales copy.
80 million! Let that sink in.
I mean, Schriefer says Evaldo generated 6 times more revenue, like 600% more than any native A-list copywriter he had ever worked with.
And Agora hires the absolute best of the best.
Right. And Evaldo sits there and claims it all just comes down to his secret 16-word sales letter.
Here's where it gets really interesting there, because it defies all logic.
It totally does.
Yeah.
It's like someone reading a basic manual on how to play tennis, and then they just step onto the court and casually sweep Wimbledon.
That's a great analogy.
I mean, how does someone who isn't a native speaker crush people who have studied English literature and rhetoric their entire lives? It sounds impossible.
Well, Evaldo's lack of native English was actually, surprisingly, his greatest weapon.
Wait, how is a limited vocabulary a weapon?
Because he couldn't rely on all the tricks that native speakers use. He couldn't use clever idioms or cultural puns or write these beautiful flowing sentences.
Oh, I see. He couldn't hide behind pretty prose.
Exactly. If you're a great writer, you can sometimes trick people into enjoying your writing without actually persuading them to buy anything.
Right. They just think, wow, that was a lovely essay, and then they click away.
Yes. But Evaldo was forced to rely strictly on the psychological architecture of an argument. He had to hit the exact neurological triggers for desire, fear, and urgency because he didn't have the vocabulary to do anything else.
So he proved that persuasion is universal. It's not linguistic.
It's structural. It's almost like math.
That is such an empowering takeaway. Like, if you are building a business or you're writing a landing page, you need to stop worrying about being a wordsmith.
Stop trying to sound clever.
Yes. Focus entirely on the structural foundation of your offer. Ask yourself, does it tap into a core belief? Does it actually influence action?
Because if the structure is broken, no amount of fancy adjectives will save it.
Which transitions perfectly into the next major concept in the introduction. And I love this part.
The pop music parallel.
Yes,
Oh.
it's so brilliant because Evaldo lists out these massive pop hits in the text. I'm talking Baby, One More Time, I Kissed a Girl, One More Night, Shake It Off, Can't Feel My Face, Can't Stop the Feeling.
Just absolute global smash hits across different decades and genres, too.
Right. And the text makes this wild connection between all these songs and one guy, Max Martin.
The legendary Swedish producer.
Exactly. Evaldo admits in the book that he can't play an instrument at all, but he recognized a pattern. He realized that if Max Martin has figured out a literal formula for musical success, there has to be a parallel in copywriting.
Because at their core, both pop songs and sales letters are fundamentally trying to do the exact same thing.
Which is what?
They are trying to touch people on a visceral, emotional level. They are trying to bypass logic and force a physiological response.
Like getting a song stuck in your head or feeling the sudden urge to buy something.
Exactly.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
Are we really saying that the biggest, most emotional songs of our generation and the most successful sales letters are basically just emotional math?
Yes.
I mean, doesn't a formula kill creativity? It feels a little cynical,
Yeah.
like we're just hacking the human brain.
This raises an important question about the intersection of art and science and business. People get really defensive about formulas, but formulas don't kill creativity.
They don't.
No, they provide the essential scaffolding so that your creativity actually lands with the
Oh,
audience.
scaffolding. I like that.
Think about music. People naturally crave familiar emotional rhythms. We expect a verse to build tension, and we expect a chorus to release it.
Right. If a song doesn't have a chorus, it just feels weird and unresolved.
Exactly. The human brain rejects it. Max Martin just figured out the exact structural expectations of the human ear. The creativity is in the lyrics, the synth sounds, the vocal performance, but the underlying skeleton is always structurally sound.
So Evaldo did the same thing for sales copy. He built the perfect skeleton so his ideas wouldn't collapse.
Precisely.
That's a massive practical takeaway for the listener right there. You really need to stop trying to reinvent the wheel every time you create something.
It's exhausting and usually ineffective.
Completely. Look for the proven underlying patterns of human emotion. You have to find the Max Martin formula for your specific industry, and then, build your unique ideas on top of that proven framework.
It saves you from guessing what the market wants.
It really does. But it's also important to note that finding this formula wasn't just a sudden stroke of genius for Evaldo.
Oh, not at all. It was a brutal process.
Right, he didn't just wake up one day with the 16 words in his head. The formula was born out of intense, repeated failure.
Which is key idea number 4, the tremendous value of bombs.
Yes, bombs. Because Evaldo's early days were not glamorous. He wasn't an overnight success. He was just this average copywriter bringing in maybe 2 or 3 million a year.
Which sounds like a lot, but in that industry, it's just middle of the pack.
Yeah, and his hit ratio was only like 20 to 40%.
Meaning that only 1 or 2 out of every 5 massive sales campaigns he wrote actually worked.
The rest just bombed. And I really want to emphasize the pain of that process. You spend months researching and writing 50 pages of copy, and it just fails completely. No royalties, no nothing.
It's devastating. Most people would quit.
Totally. They just say, I'm not cut out for this.
Mm.
But Evaldo explicitly says that he gained something way more valuable than a royalty check from those bombs.
He gained direction.
Exactly. The failures showed him exactly what worked and, more importantly, what didn't.
It's such a radical shift in perspective. Most people quit when 80% of their projects fail. Evaldo used it as an aggressive data collection phase.
So what does this all mean for us? I mean, it sounds a bit like that Thomas Edison cliche, right? Finding 10,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
That's very similar, yeah.
But how do you practically do that? How do you actually extract a working formula from a total failure? Usually when you fail, just feel terrible.
Well, failure is only useless if you don't analyze it objectively, and that's the hard part.
Because your ego gets in the way.
Exactly. But because Evaldo tracked his hit ratio so meticulously, he could look at the successful 20% and lay it right next to the 80% that bombed.
And just compare them.
Right. He could isolate the common variables. What did the winners have that the losers didn't? He just relentlessly chiseled away the fluff through trial and error until he got down to this incredibly simple 16-word formula.
And the text mentions that when he finally tested this new formula in early 2017 on a video sales letter, he actually expected nothing.
Yeah, he thought it was just another test, but it completely blew him away. The results were exponential.
So for the listener, if you're taking away anything from this, it's this. Do not view your failed marketing campaigns or your lost pitches or rejected proposals as wasted time.
They are never wasted if you study them.
Exactly. Treat them as a mandatory data collection phase. Your bombs are quite literally the exact breadcrumbs you need to follow to build your own foolproof formula.
You have to fail to find the boundaries of what works.
You really do. And wow, looking at all of this together, it brings us to a massive synthesis of these opening pages.
Let's tie it all together.
So whether it's President Kennedy trying to reach the moon, or Max Martin producing a pop song that dominates the radio, or Evaldo writing $80 million in sales copy as an immigrant.
The core insight is that world-changing persuasion is never an accident of natural genius.
Never.
It is always the result of a highly structured, repeatable sequence of words or notes designed to trigger specific human emotions.
It's emotional math. And if you can master that structure, you can completely bypass the need for perfect, poetic prose.
The structure does the heavy lifting for you.
It really does. So we've seen the unbelievable proof of what this formula can do. We know it works. But the obvious burning question is, what exactly are those 16 magical
The
words?
million-dollar question, literally.
Literally. What are the words that turned an average writer into a $120 million record breaker? And how do they unlock the hidden desires of your specific customers?
That is exactly what we are going to unpack in the next chapter of this deep dive. We're going to go word by word.
It's going to be incredible. But before we wrap up today, we want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Yeah, as you go about your day-to-day, pay really close attention to the environment around you. The slogans you see, the hit songs you hear, the sales pitches that inevitably get stuck in your head.
Just really observe them.
Exactly. And ask yourself, were they a stroke of spontaneous, creative luck, or did you just get hit by a perfectly executed formula without even realizing it?
I love that. It totally changes how you see the world. Thanks for diving deep with us today, and we'll see you in the next chapter to reveal those 16 words. So what if I told you that exactly 16 words written by a guy who, just a few years prior, barely spoke a single word of English, generated over $120 million in just 2 years?
I mean, when you say it out loud like that, it sounds completely absurd.
Right. It
Yeah.
sounds like total clickbait.
It really does, because, we're constantly taught that copywriting and high-level persuasion require this immense natural-born talent.
Yeah, like you need to be this silver-tongued wordsmith who's just mastered the nuances of the English language since birth.
Exactly. But here we have this mathematical, almost scientific formula of just 16 words, and it managed to outperform the absolute best, highly paid native English writers in the world by like an astonishing 600%.
Which is just wild to me. And honestly, if you operate in any space where you need people to say yes to your ideas and you don't learn these 16 words, you are quite literally leaving millions on the table. So let's unpack this.
Yeah, let's get into it, because I know the premise sounds like an exaggeration or like a piece of marketing hype in itself.
Oh, for sure.
But the data and the history behind this framework are meticulously documented. We aren't analyzing a collection of clever marketing tricks here.
Right. No snappy adjectives or whatever.
No, we are tearing down a deeply engineered psychological framework. It's essentially a structural map of the human mind.
A map of how it filters out noise, right?
Exactly. How it filters noise, how it processes risk, how it constructs trust out of thin air, and ultimately the specific sequence of neurological triggers required to actually compel a human being to take action.
So today we are diving into Chapter 1 of Evaldo Albuquerque's playbook, uncovering the exact 16-word framework that built a multi-million-dollar empire.
It's a game changer.
It really is. Whether you're an entrepreneur trying to scale a business, or a freelancer pitching clients, or just, someone insanely curious about the hidden psychology of persuasion, you are about to learn the ultimate shortcut to making anyone believe in your idea.
And to really understand the gravity of this formula, we have to look at the architect himself.
Evaldo.
Yeah, Evaldo Albuquerque. At age 21, his English vocabulary consisted of exactly 4 words.
Wait, really? Just 4?
Literally 4 words. He knew book, cat, dog, and table.
Oh, wow. Book, cat, dog, table. That's it.
That was the entirety of his linguistic arsenal. He had 0 formal marketing training, no behavioral psychology background. He started from absolute ground zero.
That is insane. So how did he go from cat and dog to $100 million copy?
Well, before he codified this specific system, his success rate for sales letters was hovering around the industry average, which is roughly 20 to 30%.
Okay, so he was writing copy, but just doing okay.
Right. In the direct response world, that's considered a standard baseline. You write a bunch of campaigns, the vast majority fail to gain traction, a small handful break even, and maybe 1 or 2 become highly profitable.
Yeah, the whole business model is basically built on that high failure rate.
Exactly. But once he engineered this 16-word sequence, his hit ratio didn't just improve, it broke the statistical model entirely.
Like, what are we talking?
It skyrocketed to a sustained 60 to 80% win rate.
Wow.
Yeah. He generated $30 million from a single video sales letter in 2017 alone. And then he scaled that up to over $120 million overall in just a 2-year window.
I mean, a leap from a 20% baseline to an 80% win rate, that's not an incremental improvement. That is a total paradigm shift.
Completely. It suggests that persuasion isn't this mystical art form reliant on a huge vocabulary. It implies persuasion is an architectural sequence.
Okay, so don't leave me hanging. Let's look at the actual 16 words.
So the entire philosophy hinges on this single sentence. Ready?
Hit me.
The secret to converting copy is to define the one belief, then answer these 10 questions.
Let me make sure I got that. The secret to converting copy is to define the one belief, then answer these 10 questions.
That's it. One belief, 10 questions.
Just 16 words. That's crazy. It almost sounds too simple, you know?
Well, think about the methodology used by Max Martin.
The music producer.
Yeah, the legendary Swedish music producer. He's behind an unprecedented number of #1 pop hits over the last 2.5 decades.
Oh, yeah, he did Baby One More Time for
Ye-
Britney Spears, right?
Yep. I Kissed a Girl for Katy Perry. Shake It Off for Taylor Swift. Can't Feel My Face for The Weeknd.
So basically the soundtrack to our entire lives.
Basically, yeah. But the thing is, Max Martin does not sit under a willow tree with an acoustic guitar waiting for the mystical muse of inspiration to strike.
Right. He's not the tortured artist.
Not at all. He operates on a highly structured mathematical formula for pop hits, which the industry actually calls melodic math.
Melodic math.
Yeah.
Like that.
It's fascinating. He knows exactly the millisecond the chorus needs to drop to maximize dopamine release. He knows how to engineer the emotional peaks and valleys of a 3-minute track so that it bypasses the listener's critical filter.
And it just becomes undeniably catchy.
Exactly. Well, Evaldo has constructed the exact same thing, but for human persuasion.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, he uses this 16-word formula to guarantee sales hits, using the same underlying cognitive principles Max Martin uses to guarantee pop hits.
Okay. I mean, that makes total sense for pop music because music relies on a mathematically repetitive beat. But copywriting is supposed to emulate, like, human-to-human conversation.
Right.
So if you are literally just filling out a 10-question worksheet, doesn't the prose become super stiff? Like, how do you prevent a structural map from becoming a straitjacket? It feels like you'd be stripping all the creative magic out of the process.
That's such a common concern, but the assumption that structure kills creativity is actually the most common cognitive trap creative professionals fall into.
Really? How so?
The reality of cognitive load theory demonstrates the exact opposite. When you sit down to write without a rigid structure, your brain is forced to process 2 massive tasks simultaneously.
Which are?
First, determining what the overarching narrative should be, and second, deciding how to phrase the immediate sentence in front of you.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is. This dual processing consumes an enormous amount of metabolic energy. It leads directly to blank page syndrome. You end up wandering aimlessly through your own argument.
Right, you're just staring at the blinking cursor because you don't know where the destination is.
Exactly. But by utilizing a rigid formula, defining one belief, and answering 10 sequential questions, you completely offload all that structural heavy lifting.
So your brain no longer has to worry about the architecture of the argument.
Precisely. The walls and the foundation are already framed. That constraint actually liberates your cognitive bandwidth.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, it allows you to pour 100% of your creative energy into the nuances, the metaphors, and the emotional resonance of the specific point you are making. The system doesn't confine the writer. It provides a proven container for their creativity to operate within.
So the framework handles the logic, which means the writer can just totally focus on the emotion. Okay, let's dig into the foundation of that framework then. The first half of that 16-word phrase is the directive to define the one belief. And the text uses this awesome military analogy to explain this, contrasting modern tactics with the way operations used to be run.
Yeah, this is a great analogy. So prior to the 1980s, the United States military approached operational planning with an extreme reliance on centralized, highly dense documentation.
Like huge binders of plans.
Right. They would generate massive 100-page dossier that attempted to account for every single action of every single unit. The plans dictated exactly what equipment would be used at what hour, precisely how squads would maneuver.
Even down to, like, specific protocols for reloading ammunition, right?
Exactly. But the inherent flaw in this methodology is the assumption that the battlefield is a static environment.
Which it never is. As Mike Tyson famously put it, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
I love that quote, and it's so true. In the chaos of combat, those meticulously detailed plans disintegrate within the first 5 minutes of contact.
Because things change instantly.
Right. A crucial bridge is destroyed, radio communication goes dark, an enemy unit flanks from an unanticipated vector, and suddenly that massive binder of centralized planning is actively detrimental.
That's a dead weight.
Yeah. So the military recognized they had to decentralize decision-making. And this evolution in doctrine is brilliantly unpacked in Leif Babin and Jocko Willink's book, Extreme Ownership.
Great book, by the way.
Incredible book. And they focus heavily on a concept known as the commander's intent.
Right. So for anyone who hasn't read it, the commander's intent is basically the overriding objective of the mission, stripped of all the tactical micromanagement.
Exactly.
You communicate this one crystal clear intent to every single operator on the team. That way, when the primary plan inevitably falls apart and the squad is cut off from leadership, the soldier on the ground doesn't need to sit there and ask for permission.
Because they know exactly what the ultimate goal is.
Right, which allows them to make independent, real-time decisions that still advance the mission.
Perfectly said. And in the architecture of persuasion, the commander's intent translates directly to your one belief.
Okay, so how does that look in practice?
It is the singular overriding idea that must implant itself into the mind of the reader. If the prospect skims past your meticulously crafted bullet points, or if they get distracted by a text message, or if they only read the first and last paragraph, they absolutely must walk away with this one belief locked into their subconscious.
They have to get the main point no matter what.
Right. And the formula provided for constructing this one belief is highly specific. It goes like this. This new opportunity is the key to their desire, and it's only attainable through my new mechanism.
Okay, let's dissect the terminology there, because I feel like new opportunity and new mechanism sound kind of like synonyms at a casual glance. And if a copywriter conflates the two, the entire structure probably collapses, right?
Oh, absolutely. They serve completely distinct psychological functions. The new opportunity represents what is unique about your offer. It is the destination they haven't visited yet.
The destination.
Okay.
Okay.
See, the human brain is incredibly adept at pattern recognition. If someone desires to build wealth, and you present them with an offer centered around, say, investing in the stock market or real estate flipping, their brain immediately categorizes that as an old opportunity.
Because they've heard it a million times.
Exactly. They already have a pre-existing neural pathway associated with those concepts. And usually those pathways are tied to past failures, fatigue, or skepticism. Their brain simply files the information away as known and just stops paying attention.
So a new opportunity in the financial sector would require an entirely different category.
Right. For instance, instead of stocks, it might be investing in private IPOs before they hit the public exchange.
Got it. It'd have to force a pattern interrupt. The brain has to stop and say, wait, I don't have a mental file for this yet. I need to evaluate it.
Exactly.
But if the new opportunity is the destination, what is the new mechanism?
The new mechanism is how the destination is achieved. It is the proprietary vehicle that delivers the new opportunity. It acts as the logical justification for why your solution will succeed where all their previous attempts have failed.
Okay, so sticking with the finance example.
Right. If the new opportunity is investing in private IPOs, the new mechanism would be something like the proprietary algorithmic IPO screener I developed to bypass institutional gatekeepers.
Oh, I see. Think about it like a locked door.
Okay, let's hear it.
The prospect's ultimate desire is simply to get to the other side of that door. But they have been standing in that hallway for 5 years trying to pick the lock. They've bought different lock picks, they've watched endless YouTube tutorials on lock picking, and they have failed every single time. They were just completely exhausted.
I love this analogy.
Right. So if you walk up to them and try to sell them a slightly stronger lock pick made of titanium, they're going to ignore you. That is an old opportunity. Their brain associates lock picks with failure and frustration.
Yep.
You don't offer them a better lock pick. You point down the hall to a completely different door they didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
That is the new opportunity.
You give them a new door?
Exactly. You tell them, forget that door, the frame is warped, you will never get through it anyway. This hidden door is the actual entrance. And then, instead of handing them another lockpick, you hand them the specific biometric keycard required to bypass the security scanner on that new door.
And that keycard is the new mechanism.
Okay.
That is spot on. When you analyze the underlying structure of historical mass movements, wildly successful political campaigns, or billion-dollar product launches, you can always reverse engineer their messaging down to this single one belief.
They all do it.
They do. They identify a core, visceral desire in the population like security, status, wealth, or connection. Then they introduce a completely novel paradigm as the only viable path to achieve it. And finally, they position their specific system or ideology or product as the exclusive mechanism to unlock that path.
Because generic improvements just fail. They lack novelty.
Right.
And without novelty, the brain does not generate hope.
Exactly. Which brings us to the operational phase of the framework. If the one belief is the commander's intent, The 10 questions are the tactical maneuvers required to actually secure the objective.
All right, let's get tactical. Let's look at question 1. The very first silent question you must answer in the mind of the prospect is, how is this different from everything else I've seen?
And this is deeply rooted in evolutionary biology and neuroscience. There are these cognitive neuroscientists, Nico Bunjek and Emre Duzel, who conducted extensive research using functional MRI imaging to study how the human brain processes novelty.
And what did they find?
They discovered that when a subject is exposed to a genuinely novel stimulus, a specific region of the midbrain, the substantia nigra, and the ventral tegmental area exhibits massive activation.
Okay, so those areas light up.
Huge activation. Because these areas are the primary nodes of the brain's dopamine system.
Now, dopamine is usually referred to in pop science as the pleasure chemical, right? Like we always think of it in the context of eating a donut or scrolling social media.
Right, but that is a really common oversimplification. Dopamine is not simply a reward chemical. It is the neurotransmitter of anticipation, motivation, and motor action readiness.
So it's about getting ready to do something.
Exactly. Think about it in a hunter-gatherer context. The substantia nigra evolved to scan the environment for anomalies. If you are standing in a familiar savanna and a bush rustles in a way you've never seen before, that is a novel stimulus.
And your brain just reacts.
The brain floods your system with dopamine to force you into an exploratory state. It demands that you investigate the rustling bush because, well, it could be an entirely new food source necessary for survival, or it could be a hidden predator. The brain literally cannot afford to ignore it.
Oh, that makes so much sense. So translating that to a modern, say, B2B buyer scrolling through their LinkedIn feed.
The feed is the savanna.
Right. And if your pitch looks like the standard corporate jargon they see 100 times a day, their brain categorizes it as safe but totally irrelevant background noise.
Yep. No dopamine is released. They do not enter an exploratory state. They just keep scrolling.
Man, the text shared this striking historical anecdote to illustrate how deeply novelty can hijack the brain's attention system. It's the story of a quiet 5-year-old boy. He was so withdrawn and silent that his parents genuinely feared he had a severe developmental delay.
Right, he showed almost no interest in the world around him.
Yeah. But while he was sick in bed one day, his father gave him a pocket compass. And the invisible magnetic forces moving the needle were completely novel to him. It just shattered his existing mental model of how objects interacted.
Because things aren't supposed to move without being touched.
Exactly. The novelty of that invisible force captivated him so entirely that it woke up his dormant brain and sparked a lifelong obsessive pursuit of theoretical physics. Because that little boy was Albert Einstein.
It's an incredible story. The compass forced his brain into a permanent exploratory state regarding invisible forces.
Yeah.
So to ground this in a practical business application, consider how a financial copywriter introduces a new trading tool. The standard and effective approach is to say, we have developed a highly accurate new stock indicator.
Right, which is boring.
There is no novelty there. The brain filters it out. Evaldo's framework dictates hyperspecificity to trigger the novelty response. So instead, the copy reads, it's patent application number D0365193. It was filed with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office to protect the invention of a powerful new market indicator, the only indicator in the world that can tip you off about impending big market news before the news becomes public.
Oh, wow. The specificity of patent application number D0365193 does so much heavy lifting there. It acts as the rustling bush. But wait, if novelty is simply about being different, why can't a B2B accounting firm just, I don't know, film their pitch wearing a clown suit? Like, that's novel for an accountant. It breaks the pattern of a guy in a suit sitting behind a desk. So does a gimmick trigger the right kind of dopamine?
That's a great question, but no. The brain is highly efficient at categorizing stimuli. Novelty decoupled from utility is quickly recognized as a gimmick.
Okay, so the brain sees through.
Right. And the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, will often flag gimmicks as manipulative or untrustworthy. The novelty must be fundamentally intertwined with a mechanism that solves the prospect's core desire.
So a clown suit doesn't cut it.
A clown suit does not provide a mechanism for a CEO to lower their tax liability. However, presenting a case study about a hidden, legally binding tax loophole buried on page 400 of a recently passed municipal zoning law.
Now that is highly novel.
Yes, and it directly serves their desire for wealth preservation. The novelty serves as the delivery vehicle for the utility.
Okay, so you trigger the dopamine with a relevant novel mechanism. You have their attention. But dopamine metabolism is fast, right? The spike drops rapidly.
Very rapidly.
So in a split second, the prospect's brain shifts from curious to deeply selfish,
Huh?
instantly demanding to know why they should stay. Which brings us to question 2, what's in it for me? And question 3, how do I know this is real?
Yeah, we are operating within a brutal attention economy. Consumers are subjected to thousands of micro-marketing messages every single day. The cognitive load of processing all those claims is just exhausting.
People are tired.
Subconsciously, the prospect is actively searching for a reason to reject your message. They want you to give them an excuse to click away so they can conserve their mental energy.
Right.
If you do not immediately and vividly articulate the massive transformational benefit they are going to receive, the dopamine spike crashes and you lose them.
The example provided in the text for answering what's in it for me is honestly a masterclass in cutting through the cognitive fatigue of standard corporate speak. It's an actual Craigslist ad from 1995 for a beat-up Pontiac Grand AM.
Oh, this ad is legendary.
It's so good. Car ads are historically the most mundane copy imaginable, listing a mileage, the tire condition, the asking price. But this seller understood the assignment. He wrote, "Never in your life has a car made you so appealing to the opposite sex. From its provocative curves to the paint job that says, 'Screw you, I'm a car,' this 5-speed 95 Pontiac emanates manliness from every loosely coupled piece of sheet metal. Every previous owner has had a beard."
I love that. It bypasses the logical filter entirely. It is a completely absurd, tongue-in-cheek promise, but it instantly answers the question of what's in it for me by claiming the vehicle confers extreme, undeniable manliness.
Yeah, it cuts right through the paralyzing boredom of a market saturated with generic spec sheets. But when you scale this up to a serious B2B offer or a high-ticket financial product, making a massive paradigm-shifting promise like guaranteeing a business can cut its overhead by 40% in 30 days without firing anyone instantly triggers the prospect's skepticism.
Oh, their brain throws up a massive wall immediately.
Which requires question 3. How do I know this is real? So how do you bypass the brain's innate skepticism when presenting massive proof?
Well, the innate skepticism you're referring to is driven largely by the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex evaluating risk. When a copywriter attempts to prove a massive claim by simply dumping a spreadsheet of raw statistics onto the page, they are fundamentally misunderstanding how the brain processes information.
Because stats are boring.
Because evaluating raw data requires the prefrontal cortex to engage in heavy analytical processing. It burns glucose, it feels like work. Furthermore, raw data activates the critical faculty. It literally invites the prospect to argue with the numbers.
Right, they start looking for flaws in the data.
Exactly. To bypass this, the framework utilizes the ABT format and, but, therefore,
The narrative structure.
yes, you wrap the empirical proof inside a narrative arc. See, the human brain evolved to transfer critical survival information through storytelling via the simulation heuristic.
Simulation heuristic.
Yeah, when we hear a story, our brain simulates the events, absorbing the underlying data without raising those defensive walls. So instead of stating, "This compound reduces inflammation by 40%, you construct a narrative.
Like what?
Like, researchers were studying the dietary habits of a remote indigenous population in the Andes, but they discovered these individuals had virtually zero markers for cellular inflammation despite a high-fat diet. Therefore, the scientists isolated the specific enzyme in their local water supply, subjected it to a double-blind clinical trial, and recorded a 40% drop in systemic inflammation within 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. You've delivered the exact same statistical proof, but because it is framed as a narrative of discovery, the brain processes it as a revelation rather than a sales pitch.
The story acts as a Trojan horse for the data.
A Trojan horse. That's a great way to put it. Okay, here's where the framework crosses over from logical persuasion into the deep, sometimes uncomfortable realities of human psychology. We're moving into question 4, what's holding me back? And question 5, who or what is to blame?
This section relies heavily on understanding cognitive dissonance and ego protection. The text references Blair Warren's highly influential work, The One-Sentence Persuasion Course.
Yeah, that book is a classic.
It really is. And Warren highlights a profound paradox in human behavior. While millions of people will publicly applaud a figure like Dr. Phil for aggressively telling guests to take personal responsibility for their disastrous life choices.
Right, people love to watch that on TV.
They do. But there are millions more who are quietly, desperately searching for an authority figure willing to lift the crushing burden of responsibility off their shoulders. Telling a prospect that their past failures are not a result of their own personal shortcomings is arguably the single most potent method for gaining psychological influence over them.
Wait, okay. If we tell the prospect that nothing is their fault, aren't we stripping them of their agency? Like, a buyer needs to feel empowered to make a purchase, but we are framing them as helpless victims of circumstance. How does an empowered buyer emerge from a state of being told they aren't responsible?
That is a critical distinction to make. You are not telling them they are helpless moving forward. You are removing the paralysis of their past.
Okay, explain that.
Consider the mechanics of cognitive dissonance. Say a person desperately wants to lose weight, but they have failed on 5 consecutive diet plans. Their ego is fractured. To protect their self-image from the painful conclusion that they are inherently lazy or flawed, their brain will simply decide that weight loss is biologically impossible for them.
And they just give up.
Right. They abandon the desire entirely. If you approach them and say, you just didn't have enough discipline, you reinforce their failure. Their defensive walls go up immediately. You cannot influence a closed system.
So you have to find a scapegoat for their failure to protect their ego.
Exactly. You find the real problem, which is always reverse engineered directly from your new mechanism.
It ties back to the mechanism.
Always.
Wow.
If your new mechanism is a dietary protocol based on regulating a specific gut biome enzyme, then the reason their past diets failed was never about a lack of willpower. It was because the old, outdated diets actively destroyed that specific enzyme.
Wow. So you take the blame entirely off their character and place it squarely on the flawed tools they were given by a broken industry.
Yes, this is a profound application of empathy. You are validating the effort they put in over those 5 failed diets. You are telling them, I see how hard you tried, and you were robbed of the result because the game was rigged.
That's powerful.
By absolving the guilt, you lower the emotional defense mechanisms, allowing the rational brain to re-engage with the possibility of success. You unite with them against the old way.
It's an alliance. You're creating an us versus them dynamic, but the them isn't necessarily a person. It's the outdated paradigm that let them down.
Exactly. They aren't a victim. They were a hard worker given a broken shovel. Now you are handing them an excavator.
That perfectly tees up question 7. Why should I trust you?
Yes.
Because you have just successfully convinced them that the entire industry has been lying to them for years. So why are you the exception?
Right, and trust and persuasion is rarely built by projecting flawlessness. The text uses a phenomenal case study from the life of Frank Abagnale.
The notorious con artist from Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah. So Abigail was posing as a Pan Am pilot and needed to extract highly secure information from the airline's purchasing department. Now, he did not call the department and adopt an authoritative, superior tone.
Right, he didn't big-time them.
No, he didn't pretend to be an executive demanding compliance. He called and said, my name is John Black. I'm a co-pilot with the company based out of San Francisco. I've been with the company 7 years, and I've never had something like this come up before.
The hyper-specificity of the persona is doing so much work there. John Black, San Francisco, 7 years. He adopted the exact cadence and jargon of a peer. He manufactured instant trust because he didn't position himself above the person on the other end of the line. He positioned himself shoulder to shoulder with them. He was just another working guy dealing with a confusing administrative problem.
And the mechanism of trust in copywriting relies on that exact principle of shared frustration. If you are a financial advisor selling a strategy for penny stocks, your instinct might be to build a pedestal.
Like posting pictures of a yacht or something.
Right, or you talk about your Ivy League background to prove your competence, but that creates distance. The framework dictates that you share your journey through the trenches.
You show your scars.
Exactly. You discuss your middle-class upbringing. You detail the agonizing frustration of watching your savings stagnate in so-called safe mutual funds that barely outpaced inflation, while the wealthy elites seem to play by a different set of rules.
You demonstrate that you have intimately experienced the exact pain the prospect is currently feeling.
And when you do that, the reader processes your narrative and subconsciously concludes, this person fundamentally understands my struggle, and because they are just like me, their eventual success proves that I can succeed too.
So you position yourself as the guide who has already navigated the minefield. You aren't shouting instructions from a helicopter hovering safely above. You are standing next to them in the mud, holding the map.
That's a perfect visual for it.
All right, so we have navigated the psychological gauntlet. We triggered the dopamine with novelty, bypassed the amygdala with narrative proof, absolved their ego of past failures, and built peer-level trust. We are at the final hurdle. Question 9. How can I get started? This is the moment the actual offer is made. And the text places massive emphasis on engineering a massive disparity between the perceived value and the actual price.
Yeah, the ultimate goal here is to construct a no-brainer offer. But the most common amateur mistake at this stage is attempting to create that disparity by simply slashing the price of the core product.
Just giving a huge discount.
Right. And from a psychological standpoint, aggressive discounting is highly destructive. When you radically drop the price, you alter the prospect's perception of the product's intrinsic value.
Because the brain assumes that quality and cost are correlated.
Always. If a luxury sports car is suddenly offered for $5,000, the buyer does not think they are getting a great deal. They assume the engine block is cracked.
Oh, that makes sense.
Instead of degrading the price, the framework demands that you maintain the premium price point, but massively inflate the perceived value through a value stack.
Okay, let's look at how Amazon Prime weaponizes the value stack. When you break down the psychology of Prime, they aren't just selling you a slightly cheaper shipping rate. They stack an absurd amount of utility onto a single subscription fee.
Right. It's not just shipping.
No. You get free 2-day delivery, access to a massive streaming library of movies and television, ad-free music, exclusive early access to sales, and unlimited photo storage. The sheer volume of diverse value stacked onto that annual fee alters the psychological equation.
It reaches a tipping point.
Exactly. A point where the consumer feels that it is financially irresponsible not to pay for the membership because the stacked value dwarfs the price tag.
And you apply that exact architecture to your offer. You take the core product and you stack it with supplementary value. Exclusive industry reports, VIP community access, one-on-one onboarding calls, extended guarantees, and templates.
You just pile it on.
You pile the scales with so much supplementary utility that the friction of the asking price is entirely neutralized.
But there is a fatal trap lying in wait at the very end of this sequence. The text highlights the single most destructive mistake copywriters and entrepreneurs make in the final paragraphs of their pitch.
Oh, this happens all the time.
They have successfully executed the dopamine triggers, the narrative proof, the ego protection, and the value stack. The prospect is ready, and then, at the very last second, the writer starts begging.
It is a tragically common phenomenon. The writer or the entrepreneur becomes hyper-focused on closing the deal. They begin to project neediness.
Please just buy my thing.
Right. They use overly aggressive calls to action, or they start pleading with the prospect to just give it a try. This desperation bleeds through the syntax of the copy, and it instantly shatters the power dynamic they spent the entire sequence meticulously building.
Because high-value individuals and high-value solutions do not beg for attention.
Never.
To counter this, the framework introduces the push-pull technique. It's a psychological maneuver, often associated with interpersonal dynamics and dating. But how exactly does it translate into a B2B sales sequence or a consumer pitch? Like, it sounds a bit counterintuitive to push a buyer away when you clearly want their money.
It does sound counterintuitive, but the push-pull technique leverages reactance theory.
Reactance theory.
Yeah, which dictates that humans have a strong psychological reaction against perceived restrictions on their freedom. You begin with the pull. You vividly articulate the transformational benefits they will receive when they adopt your new mechanism. You paint the picture of the final destination.
Okay, that's the pull.
But immediately after, you execute the push. You actively raise the pain level of what their life will look like if they do nothing, and crucially, you demonstrate absolute detachment from their final decision.
You act like you don't care.
You communicate clearly that your business is thriving, your life is excellent, and you will be perfectly fine whether they purchase or not. The implicit message is, I do not need you. You need this mechanism to escape your current reality.
It's like trying to feed a stray cat.
Okay, I like where this is going.
If you sprint toward the cat with a bowl of food, desperately trying to force it to eat, the cat will panic and run away. The aggression of the pursuit signals danger. But if you calmly set the bowl of premium food down on the porch, take 3 steps back, and completely ignore the cat, it will eventually creep forward and eat.
That is a perfect visualization. You control the resource, but you grant the cat the autonomy to make the choice. The text provides a concrete example of how this is phrased in high-level copy. The writer states, "The classic tale of the willful and the wishful. Most people will keep dreaming, while the few who are actually serious about their financial future will take action. If I'm right and you're still with me..."
Man, that phrasing is surgical. The willful and the wishful. You are actively challenging the prospect's identity there.
Right. You are drawing a line in the sand.
You are saying, I only partner with the willful. If you are just a dreamer who isn't serious, please leave. This isn't for you.
Yeah.
You are daring them to prove they belong to the elite group.
Yes.
By demonstrating a willingness to walk away and letting the prospect make the final autonomous choice, you trigger an intense desire in them to close the gap and claim the prize.
It creates a powerful psychological paradox. The moment you prove you do not need the sale, the prospect's desire to secure the deal multiplies exponentially. They are no longer being sold to, they are attempting to qualify for a high-value opportunity.
So let's step back and look at the macro view of this entire 16-word framework. We have traced the sequence from the raw biological trigger of dopamine to bypass the initial filter, all the way through the complex ego protection of cognitive dissonance, and finally into the subtle identity-challenging push-pull of the close.
It's quite a journey, and if we synthesize this entire methodology into a single, cohesive insight, it is this. True persuasion is never a product of linguistic aggression or hyperbole.
It's not about being the loudest person in the room.
Not at all. It is a meticulously engineered, deeply empathetic emotional journey. It respects the biological constraints of the human brain by utilizing novelty to earn attention. It honors the fragility of the human ego by absolving past failures. And it concludes by granting the prospect the absolute dignity and autonomy to make their own decision.
The structure works so consistently because it is completely aligned with the fundamental architecture of human nature. So what does this all mean for you listening right now? It means that the mechanics of belief are universal. Whether you are an immigrant starting with a four-word vocabulary or a seasoned executive trying to pivot a massive corporation, the human brain processes information through the exact same neurological pathways.
We all share the same hardware.
Right. If you can methodically answer these 10 silent questions, you completely bypass the traditional friction of selling. You are simply handing them the key card to a door they have been desperately trying to open their entire life.
The framework provides the structural map. Your specific expertise provides the terrain.
Now that you understand the cognitive mechanics behind the exact formula that generated a $120 million empire, the only variable left is execution. How will you structure your very own 16 words?
Yeah, consider the most critical project, the most vital pitch, or the most stubborn bottleneck you are facing in your business right now. Have you truly defined your commander's intent for the people you need to influence? If you were forced to strip away all the tactical noise and distill your entire mission into a single one belief right this second, what would it be?
That's a great question to leave off on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep analyzing the structures around you, keep questioning the mechanics of the ordinary, and keep exploring.
So what do catastrophic military battlefield disasters, Mike Tyson, and multi-million-dollar sales letters all have in common?
Well, on the surface, I mean, absolutely nothing.
Right, nothing at all. But, if you really dig down to the absolute bedrock of human behavior, they all prove this one, frankly, terrifying reality. Having a play-by-play, meticulously detailed plan is completely useless the moment you get punched in the mouth.
Yeah, and out in the real world, whether you are launching a tech startup or, I don't know, storming a beachhead, the environment is actively trying to punch you in the mouth, constantly.
Exactly. I want you to really think about that for a second. Just imagine spending months, maybe even years, crafting what you think is the perfect pitch. You've got your feature list, your pricing tiers, your beautifully designed slide deck.
Oh yeah, the slide deck is always perfect.
Right. And you step into the boardroom, or you hit send on that massive email campaign, and literally within 10 seconds, the prospect asks a question you didn't anticipate.
Or a competitor suddenly drops their price.
Or the market shifts. And if you are trying to persuade anyone of anything, and you're doing it by relying on a rigid script instead of a singular, unbreakable North Star, your message is basically doomed before it even leaves your mouth.
It's an illusion of control. I mean, we
Yeah.
build these incredibly complex mental architectures of how a conversation or campaign is going to go. And it's entirely based on the assumption that the other party will play the exact role we wrote for them.
Which they never do.
Never. Because the consumer, the prospect, the market, they haven't read your script. They operate on their own chaotic, totally unpredictable momentum.
So how do you survive that? If rigid planning is like an actual liability, how do you persuade anyone in a chaotic environment? Well, that is the foundational question we are attacking today. We are doing a deep dive into Chapter 2 of Evaldo Albuquerque's seminal book, The 16-Word Sales
A
Letter.
fantastic book, by the way.
Oh, absolutely incredible. And this specific chapter is titled, Your Mission: Make the Reader Believe in the One Belief. So for anyone interested in business, venture capital, entrepreneurship, or frankly, just the raw mechanics of human psychology, you are about to learn the exact blueprint to cut through the noise, strip away all the superfluous ideas, and craft a singular message that forces your audience to take action.
It really is a superpower once you understand it.
It is. Okay, let's unpack this, but let's not start with marketing, though. Let's start with life and death. You mentioned earlier that this concept actually begins with a historical shift in how wars are fought.
It does, yeah. If we want to understand how to build an unbreakable marketing message, we actually have to look at the history of military planning. Specifically, how the United States military planned for large-scale battles before the 1980s.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Because it provides the perfect mirror to the mistakes founders and copywriters make every single day. So before the 1980s, military doctrine was obsessed with exhaustive detail.
Mm-hmm.
The planners, sitting in rooms far away, believed that the antidote to the chaos of war was absolute, microscopic precision beforehand.
Like step-by-step instructions.
Exactly. We are talking about literal binders full of contingencies.
I mean, that sounds logical on paper, right? If lives are on the line, you want your people to know exactly what to do in literally every scenario.
It sounds incredibly responsible. A commander would issue an order that dictated the precise movement of every single unit down to the minute. It specified the exact terrain they would cross, exactly what equipment to carry, precisely how and when ammunition would be replenished.
Wow.
And what to do at hour 2, hour 3, hour 4. It was a play-by-play instruction manual for war. The assumption was that if everyone just followed their specific checklist, victory was guaranteed mathematically.
But war doesn't do math.
Exactly. The battlefield is nothing but unpredictable variables. The terrain is muddier than the map suggested. The enemy has moved. The radio frequencies get jammed.
Right.
And suddenly, like 3 minutes into the engagement, that massive binder of meticulous plans is completely obsolete. As Mike Tyson so perfectly articulated, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yeah, that quote is just timeless.
It really is. When an infantry unit takes unexpected fire, they can't call a timeout to consult page 47 of the manual.
Right, and worse than being useless, I imagine that kind of rigid plan becomes actively dangerous. Like, if my only job is to move to coordinate X at over 400 hours, and coordinate X is suddenly a crater, I'm paralyzed.
Exactly.
I don't know what the overall goal is. I just know my tiny specific task is now impossible to do.
That is the exact psychological trap. When you give people a hyper-specific lock of instructions without a unifying philosophy, you rob them of their autonomy and their ability to adapt. You are essentially programming robots, but robots fail when the parameters change.
So what did the military do? Because they couldn't just throw out planning entirely. Winging it isn't exactly a military strategy. What was the pivot?
Well, after experiencing way too many failures due to this rigidity, the U.S. Army had to radically adapt their entire philosophy of leadership and execution. They invented a completely new doctrinal concept called commander's intent, or CI.
Commander's intent.
Yeah, and the brilliance of commander's intent lies entirely in its brutal simplicity. It is a statement that goes at the very top of every single operational order.
Okay.
But instead of listing out 100 sequential steps, it specifies just one thing: the desired end state of the operation, the ultimate non-negotiable goal.
Okay, give me an example of how that contrasts with the old way.
Sure. Under the old system, the order might be Alpha Squad will advance up the left flank using suppressing fire. Bravo Squad will secure the bridge by 0600. Charlie Squad will cut the communication lines.
Lots of moving parts.
Right. If Bravo gets pinned down, the whole thing falls apart. But a commander's intent strips all the how away and focuses purely on the what. The commander's intent might simply be the enemy must not be allowed to cross that river.
Oh, I see where you're going. Let's ground this with an analogy from the text, but let's push it a bit further. It's the difference between giving someone turn-by-turn directions versus just giving them the destination.
Yes, perfect analogy.
Like, if I tell you, take 3 lefts, go 2 miles, turn right at the gas station, get on the highway, I am micromanaging your route. If the road by the gas station is closed for construction, what do?
You pull over and call for new directions. You're completely stuck.
Right. You are paralyzed. But if I give you a commander's intent, if I just say, our absolute imperative is that we both arrive at the airport by 5:00 p.m., suddenly you have autonomy.
You can figure it out.
Exactly. If a road is closed, you don't panic. You pull up a map, you find a detour, you take back roads, you abandon the car and catch a train if you have to. You navigate the chaos because you inherently understand the final objective. The how becomes fluid because the what is rock solid.
And this is beautifully captured in Evaldo's text by a quote from Jocko Willink and Leif Babin in their book, Extreme Ownership, where they dissect Navy SEAL leadership.
Great book.
Yeah. And they point out that while the commander's intent might be the shortest sentence in the entire briefing, it is the most vital piece of intelligence provided.
Wow, really?
Yes, when the CI is internalized by every single person involved, it acts as a decentralized compass. It guides every micro-decision made in the mud and the blood. It gives the team the ultimate flexibility to react to the unpredictable, because everyone knows what victory looks like.
Which brings us crashing right into the world of business, marketing, and persuasion. Because this is exactly, and I mean exactly, where 99% of copywriters, founders, and salespeople fail.
Oh, completely.
They sit down to write a pitch or a sales page, and they approach it like that pre-1980s military planner. They have their binder full of contingencies.
Yep. They have a list of 20 product features they want to cram into the email. They have a pricing discount strategy. They have 3 different customer avatars they are trying to speak to simultaneously. They have turn-by-turn directions for the prospect.
But they don't have a commander's intent. They don't have an ultimate goal for the message itself. And Evaldo points out that if you don't know the exact psychological destination you are trying to drive your reader toward, how on earth can you expect them to arrive there?
You can't.
The reader will just get lost in your features and bounce. So before you write a single word of copy, before you design a single slide in a pitch deck, you must define your commander's intent.
And in the business world, specifically within the framework of this 16-word sales letter system, that commander's intent translates into a very specific psychological mechanism.
Okay, tell us about that.
Just as a military officer arrives at their CI by asking, what is the single most important thing we must do during this mission? A marketer must ask, what is the single most important thing I must make the prospect believe?
Oh.
The answer to that question is what Evaldo calls the one belief.
Let's slow down here because this is the fulcrum of the entire chapter. The single most important thing you can do when trying to persuade someone is not to make them like you. It's not to impress them with your vocabulary. It's to make them believe one specific engineered sentence.
Yes. And Evaldo actually credits this foundational formula to marketing expert Russell Brunson, noting it is the absolute core of the entire persuasion system.
Okay, what is the formula?
The formula for the one belief is this. If I can get someone to truly believe that the new opportunity is the key to what they want the most, and they can only get it through my vehicle, then they have no other options but to buy.
Man, I want to dissect the psychology of that sentence because it is incredibly aggressive. And I mean that in a structurally profound way.
It really is.
You are not just making a polite suggestion. You are not presenting a list of reasons why your product is good and leaving it up to them to decide. You are building a psychological fence around the prospect. You are systematically restricting their options.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah.
Persuasion at this elite level isn't about adding information to the prospect's brain. It's about removing alternatives.
Oh, that's good.
Removing alternatives.
Exactly. If you successfully implant that one belief, if they truly, at their core, believe that your new opportunity is the only way to get the thing they're already desperate for and you are the only gatekeeper to that opportunity, then handing over their credit card isn't just a nice idea.
It's mandatory.
It becomes the only logical conclusion their brain can arrive at. It is a forced psychological checkmate.
But let me push back on this because I know exactly what founders and creatives listening to this are screaming at their phones right now.
I can hear them too. They're saying, wait, only one belief. Doesn't that severely limit my creativity? Like, I'm building a B2B SaaS platform that has 30 revolutionary features. It does inventory, it does payroll, it uses AI to predict market trends. If I distill all of that down to just one belief, aren't I leaving all my best stuff on the cutting room floor? Aren't I dumbing down my life's work?
It is the most common fear among creators. But Evaldo argues the exact opposite is true. Having a one belief doesn't kill creativity. It focuses it into a laser.
How so?
You have to understand how the human brain processes information. We are constantly under cognitive overload. like all day long.
Oh.
If you throw 30 features at a prospect, you are drastically increasing their cognitive load.
Right.
You force them to evaluate, prioritize, and synthesize all those features themselves. The brain hates burning calories on evaluation, so it just shuts down. It chooses inaction. It bounces off your website.
So throwing everything at the wall actually dilutes the message.
It shatters the message. Think of the one belief as a relentless, unforgiving filter. It forces you to strip away the superfluous noise. If you have an amazing feature, you don't necessarily delete it, but you must frame it so that it serves as proof of the one belief.
Oh, okay. So it's supporting evidence.
Exactly. Every story you tell, every bullet point, every testimonial must be an arrow pointing directly at that single commander's intent. If a feature doesn't prove the one belief, it is a distraction, and it must be cut.
That makes a lot of sense. It shifts the burden of synthesis from the buyer back to the seller. You do the hard work of figuring out what matters so they don't have to.
Precisely.
The practical takeaway here is that you have to literally write down your one belief statement before you build anything. If you cannot articulate it clearly in one sentence, your idea isn't baked yet. It's just a pile of features looking for a purpose.
Exactly. But you can't just write any sentence. To construct a weaponized one belief, we have to deconstruct Evaldo's formula, because it is made up of three very distinct, highly engineered elements.
Okay, let's hear them.
The new opportunity, your prospect's desire, and the new mechanism. If you are missing any of these three load-bearing pillars, the psychological trap basically collapses.
Let's take them one by one and really pull the wiring out of the wall to see how they work. Part 1 of the formula. The new opportunity. The text says this is your unique selling proposition, your USP. It's the what. But the critical keyword here is new.
It is the most important word in the formula, and it is where roughly 90% of businesses fail right out of the gate. If your opportunity isn't completely fundamentally new, it is virtually worthless.
I mean, that sounds like hyperbole. If I make a vacuum cleaner that has 20% more suction than a Dyson, that's not a new invention, it's just an improvement. Are you saying that's worthless?
From a psychological persuasion standpoint, yes, it is severely handicapped. Evaldo gives some great negative examples to illustrate this.
Yeah, let's hear them.
He says pitching, eating healthy and exercising, or investing in a diversified stock portfolio are completely useless as opportunities. Why? Because there is absolutely zero uniqueness to them.
Right. If I launch a fitness app and my big headline is, if you eat lean proteins and jog 3 times a week, you'll lose weight. I'm technically telling the truth, but I will go bankrupt in a week.
Because the prospect's brain immediately habituates to the message. We have to look at the neuroscience of novelty here. The brain is an energy conservation machine.
True.
It is constantly scanning the environment for patterns it recognizes so it can ignore them and save energy. When a prospect hears diet and exercise, their reticular activating system, the part of the brain responsible for attention, literally does not fire.
It just zones out.
It categorizes the information as already known, already tried, already failed, and deletes it from conscious thought.
So the brain refuses to engage.
It literally does not release dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter of anticipation and learning. It is triggered by the unexpected, by novelty. If you offer an improvement, a better diet, a faster software, a stronger vacuum, you are just asking to be compared to the old thing. Better invites analytical comparison. Better triggers the critical mind to weigh pros and cons.
And the critical mind is the enemy of the sale. If I say my vacuum has 20% more suction, I've just invited you to go look up the specs of a Dyson to see if I'm telling the truth. I've sent you to my competitor.
Precisely. But new bypasses all of that. New creates a category of one.
Right.
You cannot compare a completely new opportunity to anything else because there is no baseline.
That is so true.
It forces the brain to wake up, release dopamine, and pay attention because it has to figure out what this new thing is. You aren't competing anymore. You are standing alone.
Let me play devil's advocate here, though. Let's look at the most successful company in the world, Apple. Apple almost never invents completely new things. They didn't invent the smartphone. They didn't invent the MP3 player. They didn't invent the smartwatch. They just made existing things significantly better. Doesn't Apple's entire trillion-dollar existence violate this rule?
That is a brilliant point. But it actually proves the rule perfectly if you look at their marketing rather than their engineering.
Okay, how so?
Apple's engineers make things better. Apple's marketers frame things as entirely new opportunities. When Steve Jobs introduced the iPod, he didn't get on stage and say, "We have engineered a portable MP3 player with a 15% more efficient hard drive and a slightly better battery life than the Diamond Rio.
Right, that would be an improvement pitch.
Exactly.
Instead, he said 1,000 songs in your pocket.
Boom. He framed it as a completely new paradigm of interacting with music. He didn't sell a better MP3 player. He created a new category of existence. When they launched the iPhone, it wasn't a better BlackBerry.
Oh, yeah, he famously pitched it as 3 things.
Yes, it was an iPod, a phone, and an internet communicator all rolled into one entirely new device. Apple is the master of taking better technology and wrapping it in a new opportunity. One belief.
That is a massive distinction. So for you, the listener auditing your own business right now, if your pitch sounds like something your prospect has heard before from 3 of your competitors, you are dead in the water. You are fighting a war of attrition on features and price.
A war you'll probably lose.
Right. You have to completely reframe your offer so that it sounds like a completely new, untried path. It cannot just be an upgrade.
But here's where we hit the second hurdle. Being new is mandatory to get attention, but it is not enough to generate action.
Why not?
Well, a new type of paperclip is novel. It might even trigger a tiny spike of dopamine because it's an unusual shape. But nobody's going to empty their bank account for it. Why? Because the new opportunity has to intersect with a deep, pre-existing human ache.
Which brings us to the second pillar of the formula, part 2, your prospect's desire.
The new opportunity only has value if it acts as a specific key to unlock a door the prospect is already desperately trying to open. It has to provide a transformation that makes them feel more significant, more secure, more respected, or more loved.
The text goes pretty deep into the specific categories of this desire. It isn't just a vague, cloudy sense of wanting stuff. It's tied directly to our biological and sociological imperatives. Evaldo lists the core categories of well-being: mental, physical, social, emotional, sexual, and financial.
And what's fascinating is how he maps the dual nature of desire across these categories.
What do you mean by dual nature?
We often think of desire as a forward-moving force. The desire to acquire something positive, the desire to make $1 million or get a six-pack or find a spouse. But the text emphasizes that desire is equally, if not more powerfully, driven by the need to decrease or eliminate the risk of negative impacts to those areas of well-being.
The fear of loss.
Exactly. The desire to avoid financial ruin in retirement is often a much more powerful driver than the desire to buy a yacht. The desire to eliminate chronic back pain is more urgent than the desire to run a marathon.
Let's ground this. Give us some concrete examples from the text of how these desires manifest in specific markets.
Sure. So in the health space, the core desire rarely stops at the physical level. Yes, people want to lose weight, lower their blood pressure, or build muscle, but why? Usually, it ties deeply into social or sexual well-being. They want to feel attractive, they want respect, they want the confidence to take their shirt off at the beach.
Yeah, makes sense.
In the biz op or business opportunity space, the surface desire is making money. But the deep emotional desire is usually to work from home, escape a tyrannical boss, or reclaim their time. That is emotional well-being.
Right, it's about freedom.
And in the pure financial or investment niche, the burning desire is often about safety, legacy, and knowing you can take care of your family without stress.
So what does this all mean? It means that as a marketer, as an entrepreneur, you are not inventing desire. That is a fool's errand. You cannot manufacture a deep psychological desire out of thin air with a clever ad campaign. Desire is an existing, raging river. It has been flowing inside your prospects since the day they were born.
Yes. You don't dig the river. You just find where it's flowing fastest and build your water wheel right in the middle of it.
Your only job is to position your new opportunity as the specific, perfectly shaped vessel that will carry them down that river to their destination. You are simply channeling their existing pent-up momentum toward your solution.
But, and there's a massive roadblock here, even if you have a genuinely new opportunity, and even if it perfectly targets their deepest, most desperate desire,
They still won't buy.
they still won't buy.
Why not? If I show a starving man a new type of food, why wouldn't he eat it?
Because humans are deeply skeptical, cynical creatures, especially in the modern marketplace. I mean, we have all been burned.
Oh, yeah.
We have all bought the pill that didn't work, the course that was a scam, the software that was full of bugs. If you walk up to a prospect and say, I have a brand new way for you to make $10,000 a month and quit your job, their emotional brain screams, yes, I want that.
Right.
But their logical brain instantly slams on the brakes and says, yeah, right. How? Prove it. What's the catch?
The emotional brain is ready to lead, but the logical brain demands an alibi.
Beautifully put. The logical brain demands an alibi to justify the emotional leap. And that brings us to the third, final, and arguably most crucial piece of the one belief puzzle.
Part 3, the new mechanism.
If the new opportunity is what makes your offer unique, the new mechanism is how it actually works. It is the engine under the hood. It is the proprietary vehicle that delivers the result.
It's the secret sauce.
Exactly. It's the secret sauce that makes the impossible promise suddenly seem scientifically, logically inevitable.
Why is the mechanism the thing that bridges the gap? Like, why can't I just show them testimonials of other people succeeding?
Because testimonials prove it worked for someone else. The mechanism proves why it will work for them. It provides what we might call cognitive relief.
Cognitive relief, I like that.
Yet when a prospect desperately wants a result, they live in a state of psychological tension. They want the weight loss, but they believe it's too hard. That is cognitive dissonance. When you introduce a new mechanism, you relieve that tension. You give them a scapegoat for their past failures.
Wow.
You can say, the reason you didn't lose weight before wasn't your fault. You just didn't have this specific metabolic enzyme that our supplement provides.
That is incredibly powerful. You absolve them of their past sins. You tell them, you aren't lazy, you just were using the wrong mechanism.
Exactly. And more importantly, the text emphasizes that the mechanism is where your exclusivity lives. This is how you build an impenetrable moat around your business.
Because nobody else has the mechanism.
Right. You have to make the prospect believe that only your specific mechanism can help them achieve their desire, and you are the sole patent holder on that mechanism. Let's look at the text examples. In the financial space, your new mechanism isn't just, we pick good stocks.
That's too generic.
Right. It's a proprietary AI algorithmic trading system that analyzes subreddit sentiment.
Which only you own.
Right. In the biz op space, it's not, we teach you marketing, it's a shadow funnel methodology. In the health space, it's not a vitamin, it's a unique synthesis of 3 rare Amazonian adaptogens in a sustained release capsule.
It provides the logical justification for the emotional purchase. They want the result because of desire, but they use the mechanism to explain the purchase to their spouse. Like, honey, I didn't just buy another workout program, I bought a system that utilizes muscle confusion technology.
Yes, exactly.
The practical takeaway here is that if you can't explicitly name, define, and explain the how behind your product, your prospect has no logical leg to stand on to trust you. The mechanism makes the promise believable.
And when you lock those 3 elements together, a new opportunity targeting a deep desire, powered by a proprietary new mechanism, you have the formula for a one belief that can generate millions of dollars.
I want to make absolutely sure everyone listening grasps how universal this framework is. It is so easy to listen to a deep dive about marketing psychology and think, sure, this works for sleazy internet marketers selling crypto courses, but I sell enterprise software, or I sell organic soap. This doesn't apply to me. But human neurology doesn't change based on the product.
It does not.
Yeah.
The brain evaluates a bar of soap and a B2B SaaS platform using the exact same underlying psychological hardware.
To prove this, let's play a game. Evaldo provides a masterclass list of massively successful real-world campaigns in the text. I'm going to read off the product, and I want you to act as the surgeon.
Okay, ready.
Dissect the campaign for us. Break it down into the new opportunity, the desire, and the mechanism, exactly as Evaldo lays it out. Let's show how this applies to everything. Ready?
I love this. Bring them on. What's fascinating here is how universal this framework is across completely different industries. Let's look at the DNA of these campaigns.
Let's start with an absolute titan in the home fitness world from a few years back, P90X.
Okay, P90X is a brilliant example. The new opportunity they presented was avoiding the plateau effect. Because anyone who has ever worked out knows that after 3 weeks of doing the same routine, you hit a wall and stop seeing results. That was the known pain point.
Right.
The desire they tapped into was obvious. Building lean muscle and getting shredded.
But the genius is the mechanism. Why would this DVD set work when my gym membership failed?
Because of the new mechanism, which they heavily trademark. Muscle confusion. They gave a scientific-sounding name to the act of just changing your workout routine, but by calling it muscle confusion, they created an exclusive vehicle. Suddenly, you weren't just exercising, you were utilizing muscle confusion technology to shatter the plateau effect and get ripped. Opportunity, desire, mechanism. Boom.
Perfect. Let's pivot entirely to the B2B marketing space. Jeff Walker's Product Launch Formula. This is a course that has generated hundreds of millions of dollars in the entrepreneurial space.
Right. The new opportunity there was framed around warming up prospects. Before Jeff Walker, the standard internet marketing advice was just to drive traffic directly to a sales page and hope they buy. He introduced the idea of a multi-day educational sequence.
Okay, and the desire.
The desire was successfully launching an online product for a massive windfall.
And the mechanism.
He literally named the mechanism after the product. The new mechanism was the product launch formula itself, a specific step-by-step sequence of 4 videos that creates psychological anticipation. If you wanted the massive launch, you needed the formula.
Let's jump to teenagers and skincare. Proactive. They absolutely dominated late-night infomercials for a decade.
Proactive is a masterclass in the mechanism. The new opportunity was attacking acne at every stage of the cycle. Most acne creams back then were spot treatments. You get a pimple, you put cream on it. Proactive said, no, that's a flawed paradigm. You have to treat the whole face proactively.
So the desire is obvious, right?
Right. The desire, deeply tied to social and emotional well-being, was clear, healthy-looking skin and the confidence that comes with it.
And the reason Proactive worked while the drugstore brands failed.
The mechanism they coined. Combination therapy. They didn't just sell you a wash, they sold you a 3-step combination therapy system. It sounded clinical, medical, and foolproof.
Cognitive relief again.
Exactly. It's not your fault you have acne. You are using single-step spot treatments instead of combination therapy.
Okay, let's look at dentistry. Invisalign. They completely disrupted orthodontics.
The new opportunity was aligning your teeth without ugly metal braces. The deep desire was getting the perfect smile you want without suffering the social embarrassment and disruption of adult braces.
And the mechanism.
Their proprietary clear aligner technology. It's not magic, it's custom-molded plastic. But the mechanism is positioned as a revolutionary medical advancement that bypasses the old, painful way of doing things.
Okay, let's go mainstream consumer fast food. Subway. And specifically, the text notes this is pre-scandal Subway, back in the late 90s and early 2000s during their massive, explosive growth phase with the Jared Fogle campaign.
We have to remember the cultural context here. The 90s fast food scene was the era of the supersize. It was greasy burgers, massive fries, deep-fried everything. That was the established paradigm.
Totally.
So Subway comes in with a massive new opportunity. Healthy fast food that actually helps you instead of hurting you.
Yeah.
The desire was overwhelmingly losing weight without giving up the convenience of drive-thrus.
Now, what was the mechanism? Because they didn't just say, eat fewer calories. Nobody wants to hear that.
Exactly. Eat fewer calories is an instruction, not a mechanism. Subway's mechanism became the literal Subway sandwich diet. Jared was the proof of concept. The mechanism was the idea that if you eat these specific sandwiches with these specific ingredients, you will shrink. It was a completely believable vehicle because it seemed like a specialized system rather than just a vague diet.
How about a physical product, like a water filter? The text brings up the Tura per pitcher.
Ah, the Tura per pitcher. The new opportunity is drinking ionized water. Not just clean water, but ionized water. The desire is feeling young, reducing inflammation, and having boundless energy.
And the mechanism.
It's their unique multi-stage filtering system that supposedly alters the molecular structure of the water.
And finally, let's look at something incredibly mundane. A product you can buy at any grocery store for a few bucks. Air freshener. Febreze.
Febreze is a fascinating case study in habit formation. The new opportunity was completely reframing how air freshener was used. Instead of using it to cover up a bad smell, they framed it as adding a pleasant smell at the end of your cleaning routine. It became the finishing touch, the reward.
And the desire.
The desire is keeping your home looking and smelling fresh and clean, signaling to yourself and guests that you are a good homemaker.
And the scientific-sounding alibi that makes it work.
The mechanism they market heavily to this day is their odor clear technology. It doesn't just mask odors. The odor clear technology actively seeks out and neutralizes odor molecules. That's the mechanism that justifies spending $5 on a bottle of scented water.
Man, what's absolutely staggering about walking through that list is seeing how ruthless and universal this framework is. We just analyzed intense home workouts, digital software courses, teenage acne cream, orthodontic procedures, fast food sandwiches, water pitchers, and air fresheners.
Completely different industry.
Price points ranging from $4 to $4,000, B2B, B2C, physical, digital. I mean, it simply does not matter. The human brain processes persuasion the exact same way. Opportunity plus desire plus mechanism equals belief.
If we pull back to the macro view, it proves a comforting reality for entrepreneurs. Human psychology is a constant. We're all walking around with a deep, unfulfilled ache. We are all looking for a new path, an opportunity to get what we desperately want, a desire. And we all need a logical, scientific, or proprietary excuse to believe it will actually work this time. A mechanism. If you can provide those three things in one sentence, you have harnessed the commander's intent of persuasion.
Now, Evaldo Albuquerque doesn't just preach this framework from an ivory tower. The guy is a legendary copywriter who has generated hundreds of millions of dollars in
Oh
sales.
yeah, he's the real deal.
And the text provides a great meta-application of this formula by showing how Evaldo uses his own medicine in his actual work. Let's look at some of the financial promos he wrote that made him a fortune.
Yes, the text breaks down three specific, highly lucrative financial offers Evaldo wrote. In the first one, the opportunity he presented was getting in a trade before the news is public. The desire of the audience was making easy, stress-free money every single week.
Okay, and what was his new mechanism?
He didn't just say, I have good sources. He created a mechanism called the weekly paycheck indicator.
Notice how tactile and specific that sounds. An indicator sounds like a piece of software, a dashboard, a proprietary machine that removes human error.
Exactly. It provides immense cognitive relief. In his second offer, the opportunity was trading penny stocks on a Friday. The desire was making easy weekend money to enjoy your life. And the mechanism was Tim Sykes' proprietary news screen.
Again, it relies on an exclusive, behind-the-scenes tool that only the guru has access to.
Right. And in the third offer, the opportunity is investing in private companies pre-IPO. The desire is capturing the biggest, most explosive gains in the stock market. And the mechanism is a secret IPO account that he uncovered and can give you access to.
It's like a combination lock. Click, 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 the safe opens. But my absolute favorite example from the text is how Evaldo applies this formula to the very book we are analyzing. He defines the one belief for the 16-word sales letter book itself.
It's wonderfully meta. He states that for his own book, the new opportunity is following a copy system with total clarity, purpose, and structure, instead of just staring at a blank page. The desire of his reader is writing highly converting copy in record time.
And the new mechanism.
It's the 16-word sales letter system itself. He is literally selling you on the power of his system by using the psychological trap of his system. It's brilliant.
So for you, the listener, whether you are driving, at the gym, or sitting at your desk, your immediate practical takeaway from this deep dive is this. Grab a piece of paper, think about the core project you're currently working on, your startup pitch, your next email sequence, your product landing page, and write out your own one belief using this exact Mad Libs style structure.
Yes, do this right now.
If I can get someone to truly believe that insert your new opportunity is the key to insert your prospect's ultimate desire, and they can only get it through insert your new mechanism, then they have no other options but to buy. Fill in those brackets. Take your time with it. If you can't fill them in convincingly, you are not ready to go to market. You are going to get punched in the mouth by the chaos of the market.
But I want to add a critical next step, because writing this sentence is only half the job.
Yeah.
Once you have that one belief written down, what do you actually do with it? How does it become your commander's intent?
Good question.
You use it as your ruthless, unforgiving editor. You print it out and tape it to your monitor. Then you read through your website, your pitch deck, your marketing emails. You look at every single paragraph, every single image, every single bullet point, and you ask one question. Does this specific element help build my one belief?
And if the answer is no,
You delete it without mercy. If a paragraph is talking about an award your company won, but it doesn't support the new mechanism, delete it. If a story you tell is funny, but it doesn't highlight the prospect's core desire, cut it. If you have a feature that is cool, but it muddles the new opportunity, remove it. Your one belief is the commander's intent that keeps you from getting lost in the weeds when the chaos of creation tries to pull you off track.
let's synthesize all of this and land the plane. What we've really uncovered today is the concept of cognitive relief. We tend to think of marketing as a battle of features. My software versus your software. My ingredients versus your ingredients. But the aha moment here is realizing that a customer doesn't actually buy a product to get an item.
Right. They don't care about the item.
They buy a one belief to relieve the agonizing psychological tension of their unfulfilled desire. True persuasion isn't an accident. It isn't a magical charisma you are born with, and it certainly isn't a massive, overwhelming list of product features thrown at a wall to see what sticks. True persuasion is the surgical alignment of a completely new opportunity, a deep, primal human desire, and an exclusive, logical mechanism. It is absolute focus.
And that focus is the only thing capable of cutting through the deafening noise of the modern world. If you don't know the exact psychological destination of your message, your audience will never, ever arrive there. They will get distracted by a TikTok video and forget you exist. The one belief is your commander's intent. It is the unbreakable filter that turns confusing, scattered noise into multi-million-dollar clarity.
Think about the last thing you bought that you were genuinely incredibly excited about. I guarantee you, without even realizing it, you bought into a one belief. You felt that rush of cognitive relief. I challenge you today. Take a look at the marketing you consume, the ads that pop up on your feed, the pitches you sit through. Try to spot the matrix. Look for the new opportunity, the desire, and the mechanism.
It's everywhere once you see it.
But here's the terrifying catch. Having the perfect, mathematically flawless one belief written down on paper is only half the battle. Because if you don't know exactly how to inject a massive rush of dopamine into your prospect's brain within the first few seconds of them reading your message, they'll never stick around long enough to discover your brilliant mechanism. That exact dopamine injection strategy, the art of the opening hook, is exactly what we'll uncover in our next deep dive. What if the reason your emails, your pitches, or presentations are being completely ignored has absolutely nothing to do with how good your product is? What if you're actually just failing a really basic biological test in the first 5 seconds?
Yeah, I mean, it is a pretty sobering thought when you realize how much time we spend perfecting the features of a product, only to find out the audience's brain literally shut the door before we even finished clearing our throat.
Right. And once you understand the mechanics of how that door actually operates, it completely transforms the way you communicate.
It really does.
So let's unpack that frustration a bit, because anyone who has ever tried to sell an idea has lived it. You spend weeks crafting a proposal, you gather all the data, you polish the slide deck.
Oh, the endless slide deck polishing.
Exactly. You build a service that genuinely solves a massive problem for your target audience, and then you stand up in the boardroom, or you hit send on that massive email campaign, and deafening silence.
You can literally watch the eyes in the room glaze over.
Yeah, and the immediate human reaction is to internalize it, right? We think, my idea must be flawed, or maybe my pricing is too high.
Right. We blame the product.
But today, we are going completely under the hood of human cognition to show you that your idea is probably fine. Your delivery mechanism, however, is being intercepted by millions of years of evolutionary biology. So, welcome to this deep dive into Chapter 3 of Evaldo Albuquerque's book, The 16-Word Sales Letter.
To set the baseline for this deep dive, I think we really need to understand the stakes here. Evaldo Albuquerque is not like some academic theorizing about consumer behavior from a distance.
Right. He's actually in the trenches.
Exactly. He is a practitioner. He's a copywriter who applied the exact biological triggers we're about to discuss to generate over $120 million in sales in just a 2-year window.
Wow, in 2 years, that's wild.
It's massive. And our mission today is to isolate the absolute foundation of his methodology. We're going to explore the single most important question you must answer to capture anyone's attention.
And that is question number 1, which is, how is this different from everything else I've seen?
Yes. Understanding the sheer weight of that specific question is it's a massive shortcut for anyone in business.
Yeah.
Or frankly, anyone just trying to get another human being to listen to them.
Because it's really about learning how to physically hack the brain's reward center, right? To basically bypass that natural customer resistance.
Precisely. We are moving away from the subjective art of persuasion and moving into the hard, measurable science of attention.
Which is so refreshing, honestly.
I agree. Because if you do not pass this biological test in the opening moments of your communication, everything else you present, the pricing, the features, the ironclad guarantees, it literally cannot be processed.
Because the cognitive bandwidth has already been allocated elsewhere.
Right. And Albuquerque illustrates this concept by starting the chapter with a historical anecdote that pretty much anchors everything we're going to discuss today.
It's such a striking story, too. He talks about a young boy born in the late 19th century. And this was a very, very quiet kid. In fact, he hardly spoke a single word until he was 3 years old.
Which is terrifying for a parent.
Oh, absolutely. If you place yourself in the shoes of his parents at that time, you can imagine the paralyzing worry. I mean, they assumed there was a severe cognitive deficit. They consulted doctors. They really thought something in his mind was fundamentally broken or just unreachable.
But you have to look at the environment he was in. It was entirely familiar to him. He had his room, his wooden blocks, his daily routine.
Right, his baseline.
Exactly. There was absolutely nothing compelling him to interact with a world he had already mapped out and basically found uninteresting.
But then when this boy was 5 years old, he fell ill. He was stuck in bed, and his father brought him a small, simple gift to pass the time. It was a magnetic pocket compass.
And that changes everything.
It did. For this quiet, seemingly disconnected kid, encountering this object changed his entire trajectory. Think about what he was actually looking at. A needle moving without any physical contact, rotating inside a casing, constantly finding north regardless of how he twisted or turned the device.
Driven by an invisible, intangible force.
Yes, it completely rewired his engagement with the physical world, sparking a curiosity that would eventually alter human history. Because that 5-year-old boy was Albert Einstein.
It gives me chills. And the inclusion of this specific story is brilliant because it's not just a charming piece of trivia. It perfectly isolates the profound perspective-shifting power of encountering something completely novel.
How so?
Well, think about the sensory experience of that 5-year-old. The toys he already possessed, the blocks, the books, they were governed by observable physical rules. You push a block, it moves, you drop it, it falls.
Right, action and reaction.
Exactly. His brain had already categorized those rules. They required no further investigation. But a needle that moves on its own, guided by an invisible magnetic field, that was a break in reality.
It was a total paradigm shift for him.
Yes. And this brings us to the core rule of Albuquerque's framework. The new opportunity you present to your prospect must be fundamentally unique. If it lacks uniqueness, it is completely useless in capturing attention.
Okay, I need to challenge that premise, though.
Go for it.
If I'm listening to this right now and say I run a regional accounting firm, or I sell landscaping services, or I manage a team that produces standard B2B inventory software, am I supposed to invent the equivalent of a magnetic compass every time I send a cold email?
Right, like you're under pressure to be Einstein.
Exactly. Inventing relativity is an impossibly high bar for, like, a Tuesday morning marketing meeting.
That is the absolute most common hurdle people face when they encounter this concept. They confuse the product with the framing.
Oh, okay. Explain that.
You do not need to invent a new underlying mechanism of physics, nor do you need to invent a brand new industry. You must, however, frame your idea, your product, or your service so that it fundamentally answers that core question. How is this different from everything else I've seen?
The framing is the key.
Right. Albuquerque refers to this as positioning the uniqueness of the mechanism.
Let's linger on that phrase for a second. The uniqueness of the mechanism. How do we actually pull a unique mechanism out of a seemingly mundane, everyday service?
Let's run a hypothetical scenario to make this really concrete. Imagine you are a personal trainer.
Okay.
The underlying biological mechanics of fitness are incredibly well established, right? You lift heavy things, you tear muscle fibers, you eat protein, the muscles rebuild stronger.
Calories in, calories out.
Exactly. You burn more calories than you consume, you lose weight. You are not going to invent a new human muscle group. So if your pitch is, I can help you lose weight by creating a customized workout and diet plan, what does the prospect's brain do?
The brain says, I have seen 1,000 magazine covers and Instagram ads offering a customized workout and diet plan.
Yeah.
It categorizes the information as familiar. It basically files it away in the mental junk drawer and moves on.
Precisely. Now, what if you audit your actual process as a trainer and you realize you focus heavily on sleep hygiene and circadian rhythms to regulate cortisol, which in turn affects fat storage?
Interesting.
Right. So instead of the standard pitch, you lead with, I use a microhabit sequencing protocol that tricks your metabolism into burning fat while you sleep.
Oh, wow. That sounds completely different.
But you haven't reinvented fitness. You're still going to make them exercise and eat well. But you have introduced a novel mechanism, the microhabit sequencing protocol tied to sleep metabolism.
You framed the opportunity in a way that forces the brain to halt its filtering process.
Exactly. It makes the brain say, wait, I haven't encountered this specific approach before.
That distinction is incredibly practical. Let's try applying that to a business context, like the B2B software example I mentioned earlier.
Sure, let's do it.
So say a company sells a standard project management tool. The market is totally saturated. The standard pitch is, we help your team collaborate better and hit deadlines.
Boring. Ignored.
Completely ignored. But if they analyze their software and realize, say, their onboarding process reduces email check-ins by automatically pulling data from Slack, they could frame their unique mechanism as the zero inbox project architecture that eliminates status update meetings.
That is the exact pivot required.
Yeah.
You took a ubiquitous goal project management and highlighted a highly specific, novel mechanism to achieve it.
Because the brain is no longer evaluating another project management tool.
Right, it is evaluating zero-inbox project architecture.
So the mandate for you, the listener, right now, is to audit your current communication. Look at the last proposal you sent or the landing page of your website. Are you highlighting the sheer novelty of your mechanism right out of the gate?
You have to ask yourself that.
Because if you are just adding a slightly louder voice to the noise of the familiar, or relying on being just a little bit better or a little bit cheaper rather than being fundamentally new, you are fighting a losing battle.
And the reason it's a losing battle isn't philosophical,
Yeah.
It is neurological, which leads us into the physical reality of what is happening inside the skull when you get this right versus when you get it wrong.
Yes. Albuquerque transitions from the theory of marketing directly into the hard science, which honestly elevates this entire deep dive.
It grounds everything.
It really does. He cites specific medical research from cognitive neuroscientists Nico Bunchek and Emra Duzel. They didn't just theorize about attention, they mapped it physically.
Their work represents a phenomenal intersection of neurology and human behavior. Bunchek and Duzel utilize functional magnetic resonance imaging fMRI scans.
For context, an fMRI measures brain activity by detecting changes associated with blood flow.
Right. When an area of the brain is more active, it consumes more oxygen, and blood flow increases to that specific region to meet the demand. They wanted to observe what literally lights up in a human brain when it is exposed to different types of stimuli.
And their findings isolate exactly why the unique mechanism is non-negotiable. They found that when a person encounters something completely new, a very specific primitive region of the midbrain called the substantia nigra, or the ventral tegmental area, exhibits a massive spike in activity.
The researchers actually refer to this region as the brain's novelty center.
It's worth dissecting the anatomy just a bit to understand the gravity of this. The substantia nigra, which translates literally to black substance due to the high levels of neuromelanin in its neurons, plays a critical role in the basal ganglia.
It is deeply involved in reward prediction and motor control.
Right. And when it detects a novel stimulus, it initiates this huge cascade of neurotransmitters. But the critical finding from Bunchak and Duzel, the part that explains the failure of 99% of sales pitches, is what happens when the stimulus is not novel.
This is the scary part for marketers. If the stimulus is familiar, the substantia nigra stays dormant. There is no spike in blood flow. There is no activation.
It just remains neurologically quiet.
It is a binary response mechanism in that specific context. Novelty triggers the cascade. Familiarity suppresses it completely.
It functions exactly like a motion sensor security light on a driveway.
I love that analogy.
Think about it. Imagine you have a high-powered floodlight scanning your front yard. The familiar objects in its field of view, the car parked in its usual spot, the mailbox, the big oak tree, they don't trigger the sensor.
Because the system is calibrated to ignore them.
Exactly. The driveway stays dark, saving electricity. But the moment a brand new object enters the frame, like a delivery truck or an unrecognized person, the floodlights engage instantly.
The analogy holds up perfectly when you consider the concept of habituation. The brain is basically the ultimate energy conservation machine. Despite only accounting for about 2% of our body weight, the human brain consumes roughly 20% of our daily caloric intake.
That is a massive metabolic drain.
Huge. Therefore, it cannot afford to expend high-level cognitive energy analyzing every single data point in its environment. It relies on habituation. It learns the patterns of the environment and then effectively mutes them.
So if it recognizes an email subject line that mimics the structure of every other vendor pitch, the mental motion sensor just does not trip.
The substantia nigra stays dark.
But wait, burning that much energy to release neurochemicals every time we see something new seems incredibly inefficient too. Like, why would the brain evolve an energy conservation system only to blow its resources the moment a shiny new object appears? What is the actual payoff?
The payoff is the expectation of reward. According to the mechanics outlined by Bunzek and Duzel, the brain perceives newness as possessing the potential for a reward.
Okay, potential is the key word there.
Right. It is this potential that motivates us to explore our environment. When the novelty center lights up, the brain releases dopamine.
We really need to clarify dopamine's role here because popular culture has completely warped our understanding of it.
Oh, absolutely.
We are constantly told dopamine is the pleasure chemical, like the thing that makes us feel good when we eat sugar or get a like on social media.
That is a very widespread misconception.
Yeah.
Neuroscientists classify dopamine not as the reward itself, but as the motivation or seeking chemical.
The seeking chemical.
Yes, it is the chemical of craving and anticipation. It is the alarm clock that wakes up the cognitive system and says, there is something unknown here, investigate it. It might be valuable. It compels the organism to act.
So the dopamine hit is what physically forces the prospect to keep reading your email or keep listening to your presentation.
Exactly. But here is the mechanism that ruins most marketing campaigns. Once the brain learns what the stimulus is, once it categorizes the object or the idea as familiar, the brain realizes there is no new reward to be extracted from it.
The potential just drops to zero.
Right. Consequently, the dopamine production shuts off. The floodlights turn off.
Translating that into a practical reality for you listening right now, to get a customer to pay attention, to actually stop scrolling through their feed or to stop daydreaming during your quarterly review presentation, you are legally obligated by their biology to release a dose of dopamine in their brain.
Legally obligated. I like that.
It's true. If your pitch sounds familiar, their midbrain stays completely dormant. The motion sensor doesn't trip. You are ignored not because your product is inferior and not because the prospect dislikes you, but because their brain's energy conservation system filtered you out before their conscious mind even had a say in the matter.
You are literally fighting millions of years of hardwired neurological programming with, like, a bullet point list of features.
It's a totally unfair fight.
It is an entirely unfair fight unless you understand how to trigger the dopamine first.
Which naturally leads to the next massive question. Why are the stakes so high? Why did humanity develop such an extreme, almost tyrannical chemical reaction to new things?
Why is the brain so obsessed with novelty?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, to the point that it overrides conscious thought.
To understand the magnitude of this obsession, we have to look past modern commerce. Albuquerque references the work of Oren Klaff, the author of Pitch Anything, to contextualize this.
Klaff's work is fantastic.
It really is. Klaff provides a maxim that summarizes the entire human condition regarding attention. He says, attention will be given when information novelty is high and will drift away when information novelty is low.
And Klaff doesn't root this in consumer psychology. He roots it in evolutionary survival. We have to, travel back in time to the environment of our ancient ancestors to see why this system was built in the first place.
We must consider the environment in which the human brain evolved. The cognitive architecture we rely on today was not forged in office buildings or while scrolling through smartphones. It was forged in environments of extreme scarcity and constant physical danger.
Let's visualize that for a second. You are an early hominid surviving on the African savanna. The landscape is vast. You are surrounded by tall grass, ancient trees, rocks, and clouds drifting across the sky.
The baseline.
The fundamental reality of that environment is that static objects are non-threatening. A tree is not going to suddenly attack you. A rock is not going to hunt you.
Right.
The static landscape is just background noise. Processing it continuously would be a fatal waste of metabolic energy.
The brain employs sensory adaptation to filter out the static environment. It is the exact same reason you do not constantly feel the sensation of the clothes resting on your skin, or why you stop hearing the hum of your refrigerator after a few minutes.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
The brain registers the baseline and then ignores it to save bandwidth. The savanna is the baseline.
Unless the baseline changes.
The moment the baseline changes, survival is on the line.
Yeah.
If the tall grass rustles against the wind, if a shadow suddenly detaches from a boulder in your peripheral vision, if there's an abrupt shift in the visual field, that novelty means one of two things.
Predator or prey.
Exactly. It is either a predator that is going to end your life, or it is prey that is going to provide calories for your family.
So the brain's filtering system is designed to ignore the static landscape and forcefully flag anything that introduces a change.
And the dedication to this mechanism is just staggering. The text highlights a statistic from Klaff's framework that puts this into perspective. The need to detect change in the environment was so absolutely vital to day-to-day survival that humans dedicated the vast majority, between 60 and 80% of our brain matter, simply to detecting change.
60 to 80% of our brain matter. Think about the implications of that hardware allocation. We pride ourselves on our rational thought, our ability to do mathematics, our capacity for art and philosophy.
Higher level stuff.
Yeah, yet the overwhelming majority of our neurological real estate is just acting as a primitive radar system looking for rustling grass.
It was the defining evolutionary advantage, moving from acting on pure raw instinct to actively identifying new stimuli, evaluating them, and learning from them. That is what allowed early humans to adapt to shifting climates, migrate out of Africa, and eventually populate the entire globe.
It's how we survive.
Exactly. We are the genetic descendants of the hominids, whose brains flooded their systems with dopamine when they saw something new, forcing them to investigate. The ones who lacked that intense novelty drive, the ones who ignored the rustle in the grass.
They got eaten.
They were selected out of the gene pool. They did not survive to pass on their DNA.
This maps directly to the modern equivalent of the rustling grass, which we see all the time in digital environments. Think about banner blindness on websites.
Oh, perfect example.
When the internet was young, banner ads were novel. People actually looked at them. They clicked them. The substantia nigra lit up.
We all clicked the punch the monkey ads.
We did. But today, we have completely habituated to the layout of a web page. Our brains know exactly where the ads live, usually the top banner and the right rail. We navigate complex sites without ever consciously registering the advertisements.
Because the brain treats those ads as the non-threatening grass of the digital savanna.
Exactly. It filters them out to save energy for the actual content we are seeking.
That is a brilliant modern application of sensory adaptation, and it brings up a crucial revelation regarding how we view our audience. In business, we often operate under this delusion that our prospects, our clients, or our readers are these highly rational, logic-driven beings who are carefully weighing the pros and cons of our offer.
We want to believe that.
We assume they are analyzing our spreadsheets and comparing our feature lists with total objectivity.
But the reality is, before the logical prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that actually does math and analyzes features, before it even gets a chance to look at your data, the primitive midbrain is acting as an aggressive bouncer at the door.
I love the bouncer analogy.
And that bouncer only has one criteria for entry. Is this new? If the answer is no, access is denied. The prefrontal cortex never even sees the proposal.
So we have established the neuroscience of the midbrain. We've established the evolutionary biology of the savanna. We understand that up to 80% of our cognitive processing power is basically a radar system dedicated to finding the novel and ignoring the familiar.
Right. So the pivotal challenge is, how do we take this theoretical understanding of our evolutionary past and weaponize it to sell a product or an idea in the practical present?
This is where Albuquerque transitions from the science of novelty to the practical execution of what he calls the art of the breakthrough. He provides a very specific structural rule for executing this in your copy, your emails, or your presentations.
And it is a structural rule that runs counter to a lot of traditional slow burn marketing advice.
It really does. Albuquerque states that your unique selling proposition, your USP, the core element that makes your mechanism different, must always be in your headline.
Front and center.
It must be positioned at the absolute beginning of your communication. You do not have the luxury of waiting until paragraph 4 or slide 10 to explain why you are different.
You just cannot bury the lead. Because if the headline looks like the static grass, they will never make it to paragraph 4. Furthermore, the text emphasizes a specific required tone. The new opportunity you are presenting cannot be framed as like a minor update or an incremental improvement.
No, it must carry the energy of a genuine breakthrough.
The psychological framing here is so crucial. You want to cultivate the atmosphere of a revelation. The prospect needs to feel as though you have been working behind closed doors, you have finally cracked a deeply complex code, and you are pulling back the curtain right now to reveal this discovery specifically to them.
It must feel urgent and unprecedented.
It is that hot off the presses energy. Whether you are revealing a new medical protocol, a new tax loophole, a previously unknown cybersecurity vulnerability, a new political scandal, or an algorithmic trade system, it has to feel like a disruption of the known universe.
To ground this in reality, the chapter actually provides a masterclass example. It deconstructs a real-world sales letter written by Albuquerque himself. And it is vital to remember the context we established at the beginning. This specific letter generated more than $30 million in sales.
30 million. Let that sink in.
This is not theory. This is applied biology yielding massive financial return.
So let's dissect this $30 million opening. The letter was designed as a video sales letter, so it has a strong visual anchor. The video begins by introducing a man named Alan Nuckman. Visually, he is holding up a physical piece of paper to the camera.
Right, establishing proof immediately.
The copy that accompanies this visual reads as follows. It's patent application number D0365193, filed to protect the invention of a powerful new market indicator, the only indicator in the world that can tip you off about impending big market news, before the news becomes public.
We really need to perform a semantic teardown of that opening because it is surgically engineered to inject dopamine and trigger the midbrain response. Let us look at the very first element, the specificity.
Yeah, he doesn't just say he has an idea.
He does not open by vaguely claiming, I have a new idea for the stock market. He opens with, its patent application number D0365193.
That string of numbers is brilliant. It immediately grounds the claim in tangible reality. A patent is a legal document. It implies rigor, official recognition, and exclusivity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It signals to the brain that this is not hyperbole, it is documented fact.
Following the specific proof, the copy aggressively leans into the requirement for novelty. He actually capitalizes the words new market indicator and emphasizes that it is the only indicator in the world.
He is forcefully, explicitly answering question number one, how is this different from everything else I've seen?
Right.
He is answering it by declaring that it is the only mechanism of its kind in existence.
He is isolating his unique mechanism. He is not selling stock market advice, which is the familiar, non-threatening grass. He is selling a newly patented indicator. But the crescendo of that opening is the final promise. He promises the ability to know about market news before the news becomes public.
The word before acts as the ultimate catalyst for the dopamine response.
Why is that word so powerful?
Because dopamine is driven by the expectation of reward. Before implies an asymmetry of information. It implies a gap in time where the reader can position themselves to capture a massive financial reward before the rest of the world catches on.
It immediately forces the reader's brain out of passive observation and into active exploring mode. The potential for reward is so clearly telegraphed that the substantia nigra activates, the floodlights turn on, the dopamine hits the system.
And the reader is biologically compelled to keep reading to discover what this patent actually does.
Contrast Albuquerque's opening with how standard mediocre marketing usually operates. If he had followed conventional wisdom, the video might have opened with something like, "Hi, I'm Alan. I have 20 years of experience trading on Wall Street, and I know how frustrating it is to lose money when the market suddenly turns against you. Today, I want to teach you my fundamental trading strategies."
If he opens with that, the midbrain evaluates the stimulus. A guy with 20 years of experience offering fundamental strategies. I've seen 50 of those ads this week. Familiar, static, non-threatening.
The motion sensor stays dark.
The prospect clicks away within 4 seconds. But patent number D0365193 that predicts the news before it happens. That is the rustle in the grass.
The brain overrides the conscious desire to skip the ad and basically says, pay attention right now. This is a survival-level opportunity.
This teardown reveals a devastating flaw in how many businesses approach their market. Conventional marketing wisdom heavily relies on the problem agitation solution framework, or PAS.
Right, the classic PAS.
It dictates that you must start by speaking directly to the customer's pain point to show empathy.
That's the classic infomercial opening. Are you tired of scrubbing your floors? Or is your accounting software making you pull your hair out?
The biological problem with starting by highlighting the pain point is that the pain point is, by definition, the prospect's status quo. It is their current, everyday reality. It is the most familiar thing in their lives.
Wow, I never thought about it like that.
When you open a dialogue by reflecting their deeply familiar status quo back to them, you are presenting them with the ultimate static landscape. Zero novelty is introduced.
Therefore, zero dopamine is released.
The midbrain remains dormant. You must start with the breakthrough, not the baseline.
That is a profound shift in strategy. It means that when you are drafting your next pitch, you need to ruthlessly edit your opening. Take the most unique, paradigm-shifting aspect of your solution, the unique mechanism we brainstormed earlier, and put it in the very first sentence.
Do not warm up the crowd. Do not establish your corporate history. Hit them with the novelty immediately to secure the dopamine hit.
So when we pull all of these threads together, from the young Albert Einstein marveling at the invisible forces of a compass, to the functional MRI scans isolating the novelty center in the midbrain, to the evolutionary imperatives of hominids surviving on the savannah.
And of course, the specific semantic choices in a $30 million sales letter.
Yes, all of it synthesizes into one singular, transformative perspective.
And that perspective is this. When you sit down to write a cold email, when you design a landing page, or when you walk into a pitch meeting, you are not actually selling a software subscription, a landscaping contract, or a consulting retainer. You are, first and foremost, selling a biological reaction.
You are attempting to negotiate with an organ that evolved to survive by ignoring the mundane and hyper-focusing only on the novel.
By ensuring your opening communication directly, aggressively, and specifically answers. Question number 1. How is this different from everything else I've seen? You are honoring the brain's fundamental evolutionary mandate.
You are providing the stimulus required to light up the midbrain.
And in doing so, you are earning the neurological right to command your prospect's attention.
You pass the 5-second biological test, the bouncer lets you into the club. And that is a monumental victory. It is the prerequisite for any successful communication.
It really is the master key.
But here is the provocation we have to leave you with as we wrap up this deep dive into Chapter 3. You have done the hard work. You audited your product, you found your unique mechanism, and you presented it with the energy of a breakthrough.
The floodlights are officially on.
You successfully triggered the dopamine release, and you now have their absolute undivided attention. But the human brain is an incredibly demanding, profoundly selfish organ. Now that it is awake, now that the floodlights are on, it is immediately screaming a second question at you. And it is a question that you must answer instantly if you want them to stick around, analyze your logic, and actually buy what you are selling. What's in it for me?
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.